Hello and welcome to the Solo Legion Show. My name is Ryan C. Banks. I'm the owner of Prolific.Entertainment and the creator of a new team of superheroes called Solo Legion. On today's show, we're going to discuss what is a hero. I think it's really important before I introduce my full team of heroes, which there's 20 superheroes on my team. It's going to take quite a few videos to get through them. But before I do that, I really want to deal with what is a hero exactly? How do we define a hero? Okay. So to me, a hero is always going to be the opposite of the villain. So before we can describe a hero, before we can define a hero, we have to define what a villain is. So to me, by definition, a hero is the reaction in a positive way to the negative actions of that villain. So there's circumstances where bad things happen, no villains involved, there's natural disasters. Those people who rescue individuals who are victims, they're also heroes. But typically what we see in stories, in fiction, in real life dramas, we see there being a antagonist who is the villain, and we have our protagonist who is the hero. So the hero is actually the reaction to those negative actions of that antagonist. So what we want to do is we want to go down a list of the heroes that have influenced me, the villains that they win against, and those genres are comics, the Bible, civil rights movement, medicine, sports, and religious freedom. So I want to take examples from each of those genres and say, hey, what was the hero that inspired me in this genre? What was the villain that they fought? What was that villain's belief system? What was the core belief that that villain held that allowed them to be a villain? So we want to explore that. And there's a total of 22 people. I got a little carried away. So there's 22 examples, but I think it'll be engaging. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll give a very well-rounded sense of how a villain's core belief informs how they react to the world and how their reactions to the world have to be counteracted by the actions of the hero. So I think also in doing this, it'll show you why I created Solo Legion the way I did, what their core belief system is, what their character traits are, what they fight for, the truths that they defend. So I'm hoping you guys enjoy this video. I'm hoping that it maybe enlightens you. I'm hoping that you're able to share it with someone else and maybe inspire them to be a more heroic person. Okay, so look forward to your comments. Please like, please subscribe, please give us a thumbs up. Help us push this positive message of heroism forward. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a good one. Here are 7 examples of heroes in comics that influenced me. Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin was initially designed to be a demon-possessed man. However, his insanity was changed to be the result of toxic gas rather than demon possession. His mentality of embracing his insanity leads him to have no regard for human life. Spider-Man is the complete opposite, understanding that it is his duty to save every single life that he possibly can save. He lives by the belief that with great power comes great responsibility. Batman versus the Joker. The Joker gave up his belief in the goodness of humanity. He adopted the belief called nihilism, which in essence is the belief that nothing that we do ultimately matters. Therefore, no action or reaction can be truly defined as good or bad. Everything that the Joker does is based on how it makes him feel. The Joker believes that life is one big joke after another and lives to entertain himself by doing what he feels like doing, even when it kills other people. Batman is the opposite. He risks his life fighting crime and spends millions of dollars inventing equipment, vehicles, and weapons to protect the citizens of Gotham City and the world. Black Panther versus Killmonger. Killmonger's father is killed when he is young. He spends his time and energy seeking revenge for his father's death. Black Panther also loses his father, but understands that hate and revenge will destroy him and cause him to destroy the world around him. Killmonger becomes his biggest adversary as Black Panther battles to prevent Killmonger from taking the throne of Wakanda and ruling with a vengeful spirit of ruthlessness. Wonder Woman versus Ares. Ares is a ruthless Greek god of war who promotes conflict and revels in the domination and death of others. Wonder Woman only believes in fighting for peace, justice, and equality. She believes in the goodness inside all of us. She fights to defend the world from Ares whenever he brings war to innocent civilians. Storm versus Sentinels. The Sentinels are giant robots that were created by Trask Industries for different nations to use to destroy the humans with mutant genes as well as humans who could potentially give birth to mutants. The Sentinels are the result of the belief that technology should be used to control and eliminate certain groups of people from society. Storm, along with her hero teammates called the X-Men, fight against Sentinels in order to protect the lives and freedoms of people whose differences make them a target for extermination. Professor Xavier versus Magneto. Magneto believes that the X gene in mutants gives them superiority over humans and makes mutants the rightful rulers over human beings. His superiority complex runs so deep that he is willing to kill for it. Professor Xavier opposes Magneto's views and believes that mutants and humans can exist peacefully together. He leads the X-Men in battles to protect humanity from Magneto and his league of villains who carry the mutant genes. Superman versus Doomsday. Doomsday is an almost indestructible monster who was genetically engineered as a living biological weapon with few feelings outside of hatred and a desire for the destruction of all life forms. When Doomsday discovers Earth and the vulnerability of human beings, Superman must stand in his way to prevent the destruction of all humanity. Superman eventually dies fighting Doomsday and represents the fact that sometimes heroes actually die so that others can live. Here are 4 examples of heroes in the Bible that influenced me. David versus Goliath. The story of David and Goliath is probably the most famous hero story of all time because so many people can relate to the little guy defeating the big guy. Goliath was a giant Philistine who was an arrogant bully. He felt that his size, strength, and bad attitude gave him the right to insult David's people and David's God. David defeated him in one-on-one battle, proving that the little guy always has a chance against the bully if he uses the tools at his disposal and if he is standing up for what is right. Moses versus Pharaoh. The Hebrews had become well-established and wealthy owners of land by the time this particular Pharaoh reached the throne of Egypt. Pharaoh used population control as his excuse to turn the Hebrew people into the slaves in Egypt. Moses stood up as the hero of his people, and with divine help, he delivered them from slavery and led them to the edge of the land that they still occupy today. Samson versus Philistines. The Philistines were a ruthless people who ruled by oppression and the extraction of large amounts of resources from vulnerable, weaker cultures. Samson was raised up by God and given superhuman strength in order to protect the Hebrew people from total domination by the Philistines. Samson became a one-man army as he fearlessly defended his people from large groups of enemy soldiers. Daniel versus pagan religious law. At this time, the nation of Persia instituted a time in which only the king could be worshipped as a god. This violated Daniel's and other people's freedom to worship openly according to their consciences. Daniel faced death in the lion's den and was miraculously preserved in order to restore the freedom of religion and freedom to worship openly for all people. Here are 5 examples of heroes in civil rights that influenced me. Martin Luther King Jr. versus the system of hatred. The system of hatred for colored people at that time required the segregation of black and white people in public spaces. This open discrimination against his people inspired Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to adopt a policy of peaceful protests that helped lead to the desegregation of the places in America that still insisted on judging other people by the color of their skin. I am where I am today because Martin Luther King Jr. chose to die so that black people could live in a system based on racial equality for all. Mahatma Gandhi versus British rulers. Through exploitation of India's resources, racism against dark-skinned people, and religious oppression, the British rulers maintained power over India. Mahatma Gandhi used active resistance and peaceful protests to inspire his people to attain their independence and gain their freedom. Corrie ten Boom versus Hitler's eugenics programs. Leading up to and during World War II, Adolf Hitler led in the extermination of 6 million Jews, as well as untold amounts of other victims that he sent to the gas chambers or killed in other ways. Corrie ten Boom and her family hid and protected Jews that were to be killed by the Nazi regime. Although she ended up in prison, she survived and inspired many others to be heroic in the face of government persecution of innocent people. Abraham Lincoln versus the South. Greed led to the enslavement of colored people, then continued to motivate the southern states to maintain slavery even when the northern states had abolished slavery. As the 16th President of the United States of America, Abraham Lincoln knew that it was his duty to unite the United States by eliminating slavery in all states. This led to the Civil War between the northern and southern states, but ultimately accomplished his purpose of having America truly stand for freedom and justice for all. Harriet Tubman versus the abuse of slavery. The abuse of slavery was rampant as slaves were considered cheap labor. African Americans were viewed as less than human at the time that Harriet Tubman escaped from slavery. She inspired many others by using the network system called the Underground Railroad to complete 13 missions to rescue approximately 70 enslaved people and lead them to freedom. Here are 2 examples of heroes in religious liberty that influenced me. Martin Luther versus the religious political system. The religious political system at that time was spiritually and legally oppressive to the people in other religions that did not conform to all church views of worship. Martin Luther started the Protestant Reformation, preaching that the just shall live by faith and advocating for a personal relationship with God that did not require a pastor or a priest to intercede. He inspired the world to understand the value of the separation of church and state. He believed that churches and governments must allow for each individual's personal religious convictions to be practiced and respected instead of persecuted and denied. Desmond Doss versus fellow soldiers. Desmond Doss's fellow soldiers initially believed that he should carry a gun for protection of himself and them in battle. As a conscientious objector, it was against his personal and religious convictions to kill, so he was initially targeted and harassed while he served as a combat medic with an infantry company in World War II. Doss distinguished himself and gained their respect, however, in the Battle of Okinawa by saving 75 men and becoming the only conscientious objector to receive the Medal of Honor for his actions during the war. Here are two examples of heroes in medicine that influenced me. Ben Carson versus the medical industry. Racism in the education system and in the medical industry discouraged many aspiring young African Americans from pursuing medical careers at the time that Ben Carson decided to become a neurosurgeon. Overcoming all racial obstacles, Ben Carson, at the age of 33, was named the youngest director of pediatric neurosurgery in the United States. He was most famous for separating the conjoined binder twins and performing the first successful brain surgery on a baby in the womb, thus inspiring many African Americans to pursue careers saving lives as surgeons and doctors. Louis Pasteur versus germs. Disease and death were running rampant in the 1800s. Louis Pasteur discovered the germ theory of disease and created the process of pasteurization that heated liquid foods and juices in order to kill germs and preserve their shelf life. His discovery prevented disease and starvation across the world, saving millions of lives, and pasteurization is still used to preserve food and prevent disease today. Here are two examples of heroes in sports that influenced me. Jesse Owens versus Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler believed in creating a master race of Caucasian people and enslaving or eliminating every other race of people. Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals at the 1936 Olympic Games against Hitler's best athletes. Owens specialized in the sprints and the long jump. He opened the door for African American athletes and people to be recognized as fully capable human beings who could compete at the highest levels if given the opportunity. Michael Jordan versus Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons believed that the only way that they could win championships was to play dirty, intimidate and injure their opponents, and maintain a bad boy image. Michael Jordan was a hero to the game of basketball and to all sports by proving that working hard, developing unique skills, playing hard, bringing excitement to the fans, and respecting the rules of the game was the only true formula for growing the league and maintaining his legacy as the greatest basketball player of all time. Let's take a look at the hero's belief system versus the villain's belief system. So when I engage in public speaking with both adults and youth, I often tell them, you are the product of your belief system. Your thoughts, your words, your actions, and your reactions inform the world of what you truly believe and who you truly are. This principle of living out your belief system is true in both fiction and nonfiction. The belief systems of heroes and villains are diametrically opposite of each other, and the results of those belief systems either save or destroy the world. Villains often analyze human nature, then use principles of chaos theory to cause a disruption that results in confusion and the destruction of humanity, as well as the world itself. So what is chaos theory? Chaos theory is understanding the effects of injecting chaos into an organized and predictable system. Villains use chaos theory by introducing a negative, chaotic element or idea into the known paradigm or the understood order of natural things. Their intention is that the result will disrupt the normal flow of a system in order to get a different but predetermined outcome that is in the favor of the perpetrator, but at the expense of others who depend on the prior system to function properly. Villains typically bring chaos by denying obvious material truth, then destroying both the society and material world around them with lies. Heroes often restore order by facing the obvious truth and bringing the evidence for that truth to the light so that all can see it. The villain's ultimate purpose is to cause chaos and confusion in order to obtain their goal. The hero's ultimate purpose is to use truth and justice to restore order and bring peace to the world. Both villains and heroes often suffer at an early age in their lives. Both are faced with the choice of how to deal with the pain. Villains take their pain out on the world. Heroes use their pain as motivation to prevent and alleviate the pain of others. A hero's foundation is their love for humanity as a whole, because they believe that each human being possesses intrinsic or internal value in and of themselves as a living human being. A hero will risk their lives to save the seemingly least valuable victim, because the hero understands that the value of each individual cannot be measured only by external results in the present moment. Heroes understand that human beings have an almost unlimited capacity for good over a lifetime of experiences. Heroes believe that each individual deserves the opportunity to become the best that they choose to be if given the option to exercise their free will. A villain's foundation is ultimately an internal and often an overtly expressed hatred for humanity as a whole. Villains believe that each human being possesses only extrinsic or external value based on their immediate utility to the villain or the propagation of the villain's agenda. A villain will destroy human beings simply because they are unable to be used as a tool in the villain's plans for world domination. They will also advocate and initiate genocide towards a population that gets in the way of progress toward the system that the villain is trying to shape society into. The battle between heroes and villains is the battle between good and evil. It is the battle between the philosophies of intrinsic and extrinsic value. It is the battle between the belief in truth and life as gifts to humanity and the glorification of lies, chaos, and death as tools to gain power and control. Ultimately, the battle between heroes and villains is the battle between unconditional love for the world and the all-consuming and unquenchable fires of hate. Villains have an unlimited capacity for evil. This is why we fear and despise them. Heroes have an unlimited capacity for good and hold themselves accountable for maximizing their potential. Heroes are the people who choose to risk their lives to defeat the villains, stand up for truth, and fight for freedom. Heroes are the ones who restore the paradigm that allows human beings to exist and function in a cohesive environment that is conducive to perpetuating humanity. This is why we love and strive to be like our truest examples of heroism. Some people believe that villains are more interesting and more fun than the heroes. They feel that heroes are too predictable and restrained by their convictions. They believe that villains are able to be free and unpredictable, which makes them more complex and more entertaining. I personally believe that heroes are much more interesting than villains. I believe that anyone can lose their moral code, yield to their base human nature, seek revenge, and become a villain. Villains are often driven by a single purpose, but with no personal restraint to hold them back from causing destruction of the world around them, unnecessary human suffering, and ultimately the death of the innocent are the final results. I believe that it is much harder for heroes to have self-discipline, self-control, extreme levels of focus, high moral standards, respect for the role of the justice system, and risk their lives fighting the villains while trying not to kill them. It is much harder for heroes to maintain balance with secret identities, personal lives, friends, and families to protect. It is sometimes difficult for them to continue believing that good will win over evil while continuing to maintain love for and faith in humanity when humanity often turns against them and blames them when things go wrong. Those are some of the reasons that heroes are more interesting to me than the villains. I understand the need for interesting and, in some cases, sympathetic villains. However, I consider the villains to be the necessary tools in each story that are used to demonstrate the drama that plays out when good ultimately conquers evil. It is my goal to reflect true hero values to the world through the stories of Solo Legion. It is my goal to inspire all people to aspire toward becoming the most ideal versions of themselves that is reasonably possible. It is my goal that each one of us will become the best hero that we can be to ourselves, to others, and to the world itself. I truly believe that the more heroes we inspire in society, the less villains the world will have to fear, the more peace we will all experience, the more freedom we will all enjoy, and the more love we will all share with each other. Thank you for watching and listening. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with those who you want to inspire to be true heroes.